You wake up in the middle of a kingdom that owns you. Not metaphorically, literally. Your grain, your labor, your children's future. All of it belongs to an administrative machine so vast that no single person alive can see its full shape. You are somewhere in Mesopotamia. The year is approximately 2250 BCE, and the empire pressing down on your life right now is the most powerful political structure that has ever existed in the history of the world. It is also going to vanish so completely that 4,000 years from now, nobody will be able to find its capital city. You are living inside the Akkadian Empire. You have probably never heard that name. That is exactly the point. Before Rome, before Persia, before Alexander the Great, before every empire whose name you recognize, there was Akkad. And it did something that had never been done before in human history. It fused dozens of independent city-states, Ur, Nippur, Lagash, Kish, Umma, into one administered territory stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. That is roughly 1.5 million square kilometers of organized, taxed, road-connected, document-managed territory, an area larger than modern Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia combined. The man who built it was named Sargon, not a mythological figure, a historical one. Born according to his own royal inscriptions, to a mother who sealed him in a basket and set him adrift on a river. A biographical origin story so ancient it predates the biblical account of Moses by over 1,000 years. Sargon of Akkad rose from unknown origins to conquer a world, founding the Akkadian Empire around 2334 BCE, and calling himself King of the Four Quarters of the World. Was that arrogance, or was it accurate? In his time, he may genuinely not have been wrong. So let us recreate one of your days inside this empire. You rise before sunrise. Your home is mud brick, efficient, modest, structurally identical to 10,000 other homes in this administrative district. You are a farmer working land in the floodplain between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, the territory the ancient Greeks would later call Mesopotamia, a compound word that simply means the land between the rivers. The annual floods make the soil extraordinarily fertile. They also make your survival entirely dependent on whether the rivers arrive on time, at the right level, in the right quantity. You have a field. You also have a clay tablet. And in the Akkadian Empire, the clay tablet matters almost as much as the field itself. That tablet is your administrative record. It tells the palace what you owe in grain, what you have delivered, what you are still liable for. It is filed, stamped, archived. You are not anonymous. You are documented, and the documentation follows you. The Akkadian Empire ran on writing. Specifically, it ran on cuneiform, the world's oldest script, made by pressing a reed stylus into wet clay to create wedge-shaped impressions that encoded sound, quantity, and legal obligation. Tens of thousands of these tablets have survived. They record grain allocations, labor drafts, ration distributions, livestock counts, military deployments. Mario Liverani, one of the most important scholars of ancient Mesopotamian political economy, has argued extensively that the Akkadian state was the first in human history to develop what we would now call bureaucratic rationality, the principle that an empire can be governed not only through military dominance, but through systematic paperwork. You filed paperwork. In 2250 BCE, beyond the tablets, the empire had roads, not paved in stone, but maintained, patrolled, and connected by relay stations spaced roughly one day's journey apart. A network designed so that royal orders could cross the empire within weeks rather than months. That infrastructure predates the famous Persian Royal Road, which many textbooks treat as the first great road system of the ancient world, by nearly 1,500 years. And then something goes wrong. Walk into any major museum today. Move through the ancient Near East galleries. You will find Sumerian artifacts, Babylonian artifacts, Neo-Assyrian palace reliefs, Persian gold. What you will not find, what no museum on earth can show you, is the capital, city of the Akkadian Empire itself. Because Akkad, the city that gave its name to the empire, to the Akkadian language, to an entire chapter of human civilization, has never been found. Archaeologists have been searching since the 19th century. They have found tablets that name the city. They have found roads that appear to lead toward it. They have found settlements that existed in its administrative orbit. And then the trail disappears into the soil of modern Iraq, and Akkad remains silent. Where is the capital of the world's first empire? Nobody can tell you, but the mystery of the city is only the beginning of a stranger discovery. In the late 1980s, an American archaeologist named Harvey Weiss was excavating a site in northeastern Syria called Tel Leilan. It had been around 2300 BCE, a thriving Akkadian provincial city. Grain warehouses, administrative buildings, dense residential quarters, a population in the tens of thousands. And then, around 2200 BCE, the record stops. Not gradually, suddenly. The grain warehouses were found empty and untouched. The administrative buildings were found abandoned. Over everything, a layer of fine, wind-blown dust, uniform, uninterrupted, as if silence had simply rained down. No war, no evidence of conquest, no burning. Just absence. Weiss published his findings in the journal Science in 1993, and the argument shook the field. He proposed that the collapse of the Akkadian Empire was not fundamentally political, it was climatic. A prolonged drought, now known among geologists and climatologists as the 4.2 kiloyear event, meaning a climate disruption that occurred approximately 4,200 years ago, had struck the ancient Near East with enough force and duration to destroy agricultural yields across the entire Fertile Crescent for generations. The breadbasket of the world's first empire simply stopped producing bread. Can an empire collapse because of rainfall? The evidence across multiple disciplines says yes. Sediment cores extracted from the Gulf of Oman show a sharp signal of increased wind-blown dust during this exact period. Pollen records from across the Levant show the collapse of cultivated vegetation. Isotope analysis from cave formations in Iran indicates a severe and sustained reduction in precipitation beginning around 2200 BCE and persisting for over a century. All of these independent geological and biological records converge on the same signal. The people living through it did not have the vocabulary of climatology. They had a different word for what was happening to them. They called it divine abandonment. The most remarkable document to survive from this period is known as the Curse of Akkad. It is a Sumerian literary text composed in the decades after the empire's fall, which describes the collapse in terms of gods withdrawing their protection from the city that offended them. Read past the theological framing, and the material detail is extraordinary. Grain prices collapse, fields go barren, trade routes, people who once lived in cities begin moving in masses toward wherever food can still be found. You are reading in the elevated language of ancient cosmology. A climate refugee crisis. The Sumerian King List, a real ancient document studied extensively by the Danish Assyriologist Thorkild Jacobsen, records the political aftermath. Fragmented authority, a rapid succession of short-reigning kings. A people from the eastern mountains called the Guchians filling the power vacuum. The empire did not transfer its power to a successor. It scattered, the roads, the relay stations, the administrative apparatus. They dissolved back into the landscape like clay dissolving in rain. And here's the counterintuitive truth. The Akkadian Empire did not simply collapse. It became the architecture of everything that came after it. The Akkadian language, not Sumerian, not any other regional tongue, became the lingua franca of the entire ancient Near East for the next 1,500 years. Lingua franca means the shared bridge language that allows people who do not share a mother tongue to communicate. Babylonian scribes learned it. Assyrian diplomats wrote in it. Hittite kings sealed their treaties in it. Even the ancient Egyptians in the night, Amarna letters of the 14th century BCE, a real archive of ancient diplomatic correspondence discovered in Egypt in the 1880s, conducted their foreign policy in Akkadian. The capital of the empire has never been found. Its language ran the world for 15 centuries after its walls fell. And the legacy did not stop at language. The core Akkadian innovation, a single centralized authority administering a multi-ethnic, multilinguistic territory through standardized writing, organized roads, and systematized taxation, did not die with the drought. It was copied, expanded, adapted, and inherited by every great empire that rose in Mesopotamia afterward. Babylon, Assyria, Persia. The template was Akkadian. The copies ran for 3,000 more years. You are using that template right now. Every tax record that arrives in your name is performing a gesture first institutionalized in an Akkadian clay tablet. Every highway connecting two cities that would otherwise have no economic reason to interact is repeating a logic first implemented by Sargon's relay network. Every time a language spreads beyond its origin territory through commerce and administration rather than through conquest, English today, Mandarin, Spanish, it is doing what Akkadian did first across a world that no longer even knows where Akkad stood. Harvey Weiss found the dust that buried it. The curse of Akkad recorded the grief of its end. Thorkild Jacobsen traced the memory it left in lists and laments. And somewhere below the surface of modern Iraq, the city of Akkad is still waiting. Not collapsed, not burned, simply buried, waiting for the archaeologist who will finally walk its streets. You woke up this morning inside a kingdom that owns you. You still do. You just forgot that someone, 4,000 years ago, invented the paperwork.